Antifa terrorist Michael Forest Reinoehl is sayonara, dead on arrival. Antifa terrorist Michael Forest Reinoehl admitted to gunning down a Trump supporter on the streets of Portland during an interview with Vice, shortly before he perished. The Antifa member was killed by federal marshals when they found him in a hideout after he drew an assault weapon on, according to the Daily Mail. The Antifa member had previously promised that there would be casualties, and he made good on his promise by gunning down a Trump supporter several days ago in Portland. Naturally, criminals always try to describe and frame their crimes as justified, and in his interview with Vice, he did just that. To quote him, "I had no choice. I had a choice. I could have just sat there and watched them kill a friend of mine of color, but I wasn't going to do that." With no evidence, of course, many people, members of Antifa, will go ahead and believe him, lionize him, and turn him into a martyr. Now, due to his actions, he has perished, as has the Trump supporter. Personally, I'm never sorry when a cold-blooded murderer is wiped off the face of the earth, especially when, as a taxpayer, I don't have to bear the cost of his trial or his imprisonment. I weep for only one of the deaths. There's one thing that I find particularly troubling about his death, and that's the media narrative, as described by Google, which promotes the views of the left to the top of its search results. I'm positive that it must be random. The New York Times, the first result yielded, of course, made sure to call the murder victim Aaron Danielson a far-right activist, and interviewing fellow Antifa members who they conveniently forgot to mention as such, Antifa, they're Antifa members. I just want to bring this to light because the rest of the media wants to cover up what these people are. It's barely ever mentioned because, as Jerry Nadler says, Antifa is a myth. It's something concocted from the imagination of the right wing. Anyways, his fellow Antifa members give him glowing reviews. He was in charge of security and was apparently incredible at de-escalation. Apparently, if this is Antifa's version of de-escalation, then escalation must involve detonating nuclear bombs. OPB.org, the website for the Oregon Public Broadcasting, the second result found on Google when searching for information on the event, describes him, Michael, as a racial justice protester. Just look at the framing. Think how that might affect the public mind. Of course, his sister describes him as unstable and estranged from his family, describing her brother as erratic and self-destructive. I do know he has a temper, and I know he acts very badly to being provoked, she stated. To boot, this man, if you want to call him a man, brought his 16-year-old daughter to the riots, and she was wielding a baseball bat. These are the people that we want indoctrinating our youth, isn't it? Continuing, his sister states, he's the kind of person who should have stayed as far away from the protest as possible because he's not the kind of person who could rationally work through the intense environment. Her brother had been estranged from their family for 3 years after stealing medication from their mother who has dementia. He sounds like a gem. While claiming that these are racial justice protesters, the murder victim, Aaron Danielson, was described as a supporter of the far-right regional political group Patriot Prayer. The murder victim, who had done nothing wrong, is a member of a far-right-wing political group. The other people are racial justice protesters, and he was a guardian angel who was fantastic at de-escalation, and this is what's printed in the leading newspaper of our country, although that is rapidly dropping, but the truth as described by his family is slightly different. And to put this into even better context, on July 5th, Mr. Reinoehl, the Antifa member who murdered a member of Patriot Prayer, was charged with resisting arrest and possession of a loaded firearm in a case that, of course, was dropped by the Multnomah DA, Mike Schmidt. So this is what you lead to. This is what happens when you don't enforce the law and you allow this monster to grow day by day. These are the results. And the results are that these people are cloaking their intentions via racial justice. And this is what is being framed by the media to everyone. And of course, the right-wing person who was murdered is naturally a member of a far right-wing group and thus deserved it. And the guardian angel who murdered him, the member of Antifa, the quote-unquote guardian angel, who was really good at that escalation, or de-escalation rather, they say. And to put this into even broader context, on July 5th, this murderer, this member of Antifa, the murderer, was brought in on charges by the Portland police for possession of a loaded firearm and resisting arrest. Of course, the case was dropped by the DA, Mike Schmidt, of Multnomah County, along with all the other Antifa members, all these innocent people that shouldn't have been brought in anyways, and the charges were dropped because this is what the media wants us to believe. And I'm here to give you a different story. I'm here to give you this true story of Antifa and what these people actually represent. How is it that protests turn violent every single night, and they're called mostly peaceful protests? The protest is there for show during the day, and under the cover of night, every single night, they riot, they burn things down, they escalate, they try to quick dry cement over a local police precinct and burn the officers alive in there. They blind federal officers with lasers. They destroy buildings. They graffiti. This is a mostly peaceful protest, according to the New York Times. We as a public are absolutely being gaslit, and we have to be aware of it, and we have to combat this by telling the truth and representing the reality that goes on during these riots that are escalating, that are getting out of control. And this has been egged on by the Portland brass, by Ted Wheeler, by the DA that won't prosecute these people. And the attempt to defund the police is an attempt to abolish the police, because that's ultimately what they want, so that they can represent what justice is. And justice to them is the demonization or the physical confrontation of anybody who disagrees with them, and then to be able to take your property. We've seen this. We've seen what goes on in the Chaz when they set up their little autonomous zone. Can't we just recognize that this is what they want to bring to a broader swath of America? And the people that are in favor of this, the people that refuse to stand up against this, are allowing this murderer who was arrested to go back out onto the street, because they allow these elected officials that they put into power not to enforce the law. Peace and blessings to everybody out there. Have a fantastic day.